Welcome, everybody. I've got another good friend here this week, Jessa Coulter, who is the Executive Director of the Annapolis Immigration Justice Network. Welcome, Jessa.
Hello.
Thanks for doing this. It's a crazy time, I know.
It's been a really... It's a busy time.
It's a busy time. Okay. So Annapolis Immigration Justice Network. Some people might think that we're being a little bold even to have this conversation. But I feel, and I think most county residents feel, that it's really important to know the kind of work that our nonprofit organizations are doing to help the residents of the county. And what you do has impressed me since I first heard about it. I understand you started in 2017. So we can talk about some of the county's engagement, some of the way I feel about some of this. But why don't you start just by telling us what AIJN, is which most people call it, does and kind of how it all started.
Yeah, thanks so much. And, it is a bold conversation, but I think, and as I talk a little bit about our model and the work we do, you'll find that our work, as an organization, we are nonpartisan, and our work is really the same. It's about due process, and it's about getting people connected to legal representation.
Okay.
And so
it's good old American apple pie due process.
It's about and what
it's also workforce.
Yeah.
It's
what I
justice, moral, all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. What I have found is so many people don't know about the inner workings of the immigration system. Mm-hmm. I think people tend to know that it's complex or it's hard to do, but so many times we get questions of like, how does this work? Or why don't they just get a green card? Or why do they need an attorney? And a lot of it comes down to why we're so focused on legal representation is that unlike in a criminal case where there are public defenders, in the immigration system they're not. So if somebody can't afford an attorney, they have to go in front of a judge without one.
Okay, so you go before a judge, but you don't get a lawyer.
Yeah, and that is what for children. There are children who go in front of a judge by themselves, to families, to anybody. But I'll rewind back to 2017. So I've been with the organization since 2023. In 2017, people all throughout Anne Arundel County were seeing the news. They were seeing their neighbors being detained on the way to work. They were hearing this anti-immigrant sentiment rhetoric that existed, nationwide, but trickling down here to Anne Arundel County, and really wanted to do something about it. And they said, what can we do? These are not our values. This is not what we believe in. We want to be welcoming and we want to help. And really quickly learned the piece about how critical legal representation is because of what I was mentioning before, that there are no attorneys, no public defenders. So if you can't afford legal representation, you can't.
Right. Yeah.
And so they were meeting community members and going and helping them get consultations with attorneys, and they'd go with them.
And I'll just say this was all volunteer
100%
group.
100% volunteer. Yeah.
It was Suzanne Martin and friends.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and a lot of it, Suzanne Martin was the founder and leader, but it really was also born of the faith community. It was churches all throughout Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, and our name is AIJN, the A being Annapolis Immigration Justice Network, but we actually serve immigrants all throughout Anne Arundel County.
Okay. Right.
And so it was churches coming together and community members and leaders and really wanting to say, what is the best way to support our immigrant neighbors?
And some attorneys as well?
Some attorneys were involved, yeah. But it wasn't until they went, there was actually an event and there was a law professor from the University of Maryland Carey School of Law who said the best way to help immigrants is to start a legal fund, help them pay for attorneys.
Okay.
Because up until that point, people needed diapers, so they were collecting diapers, and somebody needed a car. There was a GoFundMe for a car. There was lots of different things.
Humanitarian work.
It was everything, and then it got really focused on saying the best way to really look at the root cause of a lot of those needs is about legal status. So when you look at food insecurity, when you look about healthcare access, a lot of the challenges that people were having, the best way to solve them is through legal status. And they were finding the barriers to legal representation are huge at the time, and it is even more now, but a private attorney would cost well over $10,000 for an asylum case, depending on the complexity. There are amazing organizations that offer pro bono representation, but all of them are constrained and can only take on so many cases. And so when I started, Suzanne said, we'd take people to these attorneys or to consultations. They said they have a really strong case. They're eligible to apply for this relief, but we don't have the capacity, or it's going to cost this much money.
Well, I even remember when I was elected in 18 and took office at the end of 18. And I remember conversations with the people in ICE about legal representation. And at that time anyway, they were saying, yeah, we want people to have attorneys because it makes the process more efficient.
Yes,
people can move through more quickly, and that may not be the case anymore. But if your goal is just to deport as many people as possible and you have a quota to meet or something crazy like that, but the system works best when there is legal representation.
Yeah, because even understanding it is quite complex. And if you're new to this country and you don't speak English or you're listening through an interpreter, it is quite complex. And having an attorney to really sit and evaluate, are you eligible to apply, and then helping to get that representation is what we do.
Okay. So for the organization, it was all volunteer at one point, but you were paid executive director at this.
Yeah. So
where does the money come from?
For our first 5 years, it was 100% volunteer based, and then as we were growing, and actually thanks to a grant from the Arundel Women Giving Together, we were able to provide some funding for our first executive
their big
director.
Annual event this week. Yeah.
They are,
I'll be
tomorrow.
There.
And so we have been so fortunate, in addition to individual donations that help really create our legal fund that we started, we then were able to hire an executive director and then apply for more grants. And so we have received just enormous support from you and from county government, from Anne Arundel Women Giving Together, also the Community Foundation of Anne Arundel County, and many of those churches that started the organization continue to be amazing supporters.
Well, so I remember having conversations about this because there was a period where we had a ICE detention center at Ordnance Road, our low security detention center. And some people told me that when I came in, I should close down the ICE detention center. And then other people told me, who were volunteers there at Ordnance Road, go check it out. Not so sure. It's actually a really well-run facility. So I went there and I talked to inmates, people who were detained there. And they were saying, please don't close this down. This is the best run one. It's humane, it's clean. The staff here is really friendly, and the staff was also saying, these inmates, they're not criminals. They're people who are trying to make a life in this country, and so it's really easy to have them here. It didn't quite feel like a jail. So we decided not to close it down. It was actually ICE that closed it down, and that was a political thing that was coming out of Washington. I think the local ICE people didn't want it to be closed down, but decisions were getting made based on politics at that point. So, because of that whole experience, to me, I learned about what you do, and I learned that they were waiting and they wanted to be close to Baltimore because that's where the hearings were, and that University of Maryland School of Law had some, was helping as well, trying to provide representation, and we talked about actually taking the money from the ICE detention center and using it to pay for legal assistance. When they closed it down, there was no more revenue from the ICE detention center to use that for. But I have actually encouraged folks to support your work. And then I remember meeting with AIJN board at one point, this was early on, and just thinking the businesses should be paying for the work. And I know you and I have talked about that. A lot of businesses do pay for legal representation for their employees, and that's important. But you started to shift your focus more. Is it right that you often do the kids?
We do a lot of work with youth, and I can share a little bit about our model because I've been here for almost 2.5 years, and I'm like still fangirling over how smart of a model this organization is, and I feel so proud to be part of the organization. And there's so many things that were really so well thought out and really intentional that make it like, my first call was to our legal advisory board after the election, and I say, does our model hold up? What do you foresee? And talking to these immigration attorneys and law professors, and they said, yeah, legal representation is everything. Like you need to just expand is going to be the question. But the way that we work, so at that time in 2017, 2018, as these volunteers in Anne Arundel County were determining how can they support their immigrant neighbors, they didn't want to duplicate any services that existed. So there are organizations that offer pro bono representation, and they're private immigration attorneys. And they said they had taken this advice of creating a legal fund. And so what we do is we're really a network. So we partner with private immigration attorneys and firms who offer our clients what they call a low-bono rate. So it's not free, it's not pro bono, but it's a reduced rate. So it's they have some skin in the game with that, and they reduce their rate to make it more accessible. And then we operate a legal fund, and we provide up to $3,000 per case for representation. And if it goes beyond that, if it's more expensive than that, the client is working with the attorney to come up with a payment plan. And we've really had such success for two reasons with this model. One, you have this equal buy-in where everybody's invested, everybody has a piece in it, and it also allows us to help more people. And that initial $3,000, is that retainer. It gets the case going.
Well, it must be easier for the attorney to have you all involved, right? I mean, you must screen folks first and only give them cases that are maybe winnable, and you do some of the work for them?
Right. Well, so, and almost the opposite. The very first piece is a legal consultation. So AIJN will provide funding. We help to make sure that people can go and meet with an attorney, and they determine whether or not they're eligible. Okay. So it's in this network of these attorneys, they're only offering representation if somebody has a strong case and they're really eligible to apply.
Okay.
So when I started and learning about AIJN and see that we have a 96% success rate of favorable outcomes for these cases that we're providing funding towards, my mind was blown. I was like, it's not just that we're working with these really high-quality, great immigration attorneys, which we are, but it's also that we're working with people and providing funding for children and families and individuals in our county who are eligible to apply. We really are working with some of the most vulnerable people who live here. Most of our cases, our youth cases, are children who've been abused, abandoned, or neglected. We've had cases of victims of human trafficking and families fleeing persecution. And within our immigration system, they have been determined by the attorneys that they're eligible to apply for legal relief. And so that's where that all comes from. So what's the process if somebody is undocumented or knows that they don't have status, but who do they call and what do they experience? So they would reach out to us at our office. I can give the phone number. Yeah. So they can call 410-357-1050 or 443-203-9175. That will go to our case manager. And from there, they'll set up an initial intake. We have a small staff. We're a staff of 3, and we're not immigration attorneys. And so we do a very general intake just to make sure that the person lives in the county. But I bet you know what questions to ask. There are some questions, like age or when somebody entered the U.S. is going to have some implications with asylum. Typically, it's a 1-year deadline to apply from the time you've arrived in the U.S. And for certain other visas, you have to be under the age of 21. And so there's some of those pieces that we'll get some information on to see, if that deadline is coming up. We definitely want to make sure they're getting seen right away. Are you still getting that high success rate? I mean, is there consistency? Are the judges still using the same criteria that they used to use before the big mass deportation effort? Yeah, it's a good question. We've maintained the success rate, but a big piece of it is also that we haven't had as many hearings. So a huge part of the immigration system is that it takes many, many years. We have one client, they've been waiting for an asylum hearing for over 5 years. And so they're just in a waiting period. And so we're tracking outcomes. So fewer hearings, but is that because they're firing judges? I don't know why. I don't know. I don't think I've been around long enough to know if it is changes within the system or if it's just, this person doesn't have their hearing scheduled until next year. But we have seen some changes where people have some, a hearing or the initial master calendar hearing, it's called, scheduled, and then there's a website online where you look at it and then it is gone and hasn't been recalendared yet. And so we have been told from attorneys that it could just be because of the administrative moving things around and people's dockets are changing. But we're a little bit on the outside with that. But we do anticipate, I don't think that 96% success rate is going to last forever, but it does speak to the model and how we do the work we do. Do you refer folks to services and connect with other organizations that provide services? Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the other piece. I have spent, I think, close to 15 years in the nonprofit world, and I was so excited to come to AIJN, one, because of this model, but two, because we focus exclusively on legal representation, and I just had never been in a nonprofit that's like, we're doing the one thing, that's it.
Yeah, everybody's always trying to do everything.
But that's another one of those things of like, no, we're going to focus and be experts in this. And so what we do is we partner with, we have amazing partners. This county has so many different resources, and so we have a program with the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. I know you just talked to Dr. Brown.
Yep. And you work pretty closely with Allison Flores at our Multicultural Affairs,
yes,
right?
Yeah, we work with her. And we also have great partnerships with the bilingual facilitators through the public schools. The Lighthouse Shelter will refer people out. So, it's the both and. We're focusing on legal representation and also recognize that people are still facing food insecurity and need diapers for kids and need help with school enrollment and whatever those pieces may be. We're just not doing it. We're referring out to our partners. So
what did you do before, and how did you end up here?
That's a great question. So immediately before this, I was working with another immigration nonprofit in Howard County, where I had started essentially as a case manager right in the middle of COVID in 2020, helping people trying to get food, and there was eviction prevention program that had come from some of that federal money that had come down, and I was there for for almost 3 years, had left as the director of programs. So I was overseeing the social services. There was also a legal services side. And my time there is really how I learned how foundational and important the legal status is, and that because of this complex system, how important the legal representation is for that. Before that, what brought me back to Maryland was the pandemic. Prior to that, I was living in Central America. I was in Honduras for almost 4 years.
¿Hablas español?
Sí, hablo español.
Sí, es muy importante en el trabajo.
Sí, en ese trabajo ayuda mucho hablar español. So I was working with a really great organization in Honduras, and I was living in El Progreso, and then the pandemic happened, and I ended up back here. But I had spent most of that.
How many years were you in Central America?
I was there I was in Honduras for almost 4 years with that organization, and then I spent a little bit of time in Costa Rica before that, and I was in Guatemala City for 2 years before that. So it was a good chunk of time. And
I thought I was going to end up in a Latin American country because I majored in Latin American studies, and my sister had moved to Argentina, gotten married, and had 3 kids there, and I'd studied the history and the politics, and I just thought I was going to go down there and join the resistance, and I was probably wise to stay here and join the resistance, but. Thank you for doing that work and coming back and doing it here.
Well, I grew up in Maryland, and I just felt this. What a full circle moment. I wasn't expecting to come back. I wasn't like, okay, I'm time to move back. Nobody was expecting the pandemic. But I just felt so lucky to be able to use my experience now in my community and working with a similar population just on the other side of the border and getting to see and experience some of those factors that really force people to leave.
Can you... I know you have to keep identities private, but is there a story of a client that you think would be inspiring for people? I want people, by the way, who hear this to be thinking about ways where they can help. And you can talk about that if you'd like to, ways that they can get involved and support the work. But give us a story first so that they'll be inspired, huh?
Yeah. Well, I can give 2. Do I have time for 2?
Yeah, sure.
One, these cases where we're working with victims of human trafficking are always quite impactful because you just adds an additional layer of importance of the work that we're doing. And this case actually started before I started at AIJN, but the client was referred to us by the police. They had found this young 16-year-old who had been trafficked into the county and forced to work. All of the terrible things. I say this work is like the best and worst of humanity, and this is definitely some of the worst, being she was forced to work, and when she was home, locked up and assaulted, and the police were able to intervene and reached out to us, and within days, AIJN was able to have legal and social services for this young person and make sure that she could be safe and that she could have stability with that status, because there's a lot of uncertainty, and if you are in this situation, you're now in a country without status, you're very vulnerable. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing. It's about hope and access and due process, but a lot of it is about stability. We also have a more recent story because, a lot of questions that we get are, what's changing and what is happening now. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned before that there was detention in Maryland. Now there's not detention in Maryland. And so because of that, one of the downsides of not having detention in Maryland is people are sent to other states. And previously, the clients that we'd seen were mostly sent to Pennsylvania or Virginia. Mm-hmm. So just, not as close as they may have been before, but not terribly far. And now we're getting calls much more of people who are being sent to Louisiana and Texas and Arizona and Colorado. Mm-hmm. And so earlier this year, there was a woman who was detained, an asylum seeker with a pending case, so she's still waiting for her court hearing, and who was detained and sent to Colorado. And she had legal representation. The attorney was able to get her out on bond, but she was in Colorado and had no way back. So when you're released on bond, they just opened the doors for her and said, okay, you can walk out. And I really can't overstate how many great organizations and people exist in the county who were working to support this family, from people at the school to Allison and her team.
To reconnect to?
Yeah. So she had her family and children here.
Did they get back together?
Yeah. And so we were able to connect with another community member who knew an organization out in Colorado who could provide a hotel room for that first night because it was the middle of the night. It was raining. She was out of the Aurora detention facility in Denver, outside of Denver. And then there was a local church that sponsored her bus ticket back because she couldn't fly back. And it was hours of the bus routes, and she didn't have an ID. And so they said, make sure that you're not within 100 miles of the southern border and any borders. But it was really the whole community coming together to support this person. And then we were able to provide funding for additional legal representation. So It's an ongoing case, but something that, to me, in this time, when you think about what's happening and what's new and what's changed, it's just not something that we had seen before. And we know a lot of people in our community who have a pending case, and if you have an asylum case, that might mean that you have work authorization and you might have a Social Security number that has been assigned to you and still at risk of being detained. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing families being separated and trying to help navigate and have that legal representation for those cases.
So I know that you are very disciplined about you're a nonpartisan organization and absolutely a non-political organization, and you're not even an advocacy organization for policy. You simply are there to
We're doing the work,
do the work that you do. I will, however, I do advocate for policy. In fact, that's my job, is to advocate for good public policy. We'll just say how damn frustrating it is to know that in this country, the United States Congress has failed to fix our broken immigration system.
Do you know the last time there was...
It was a long time ago. When was it?
1996.
1996
was the last Congress.
Right. And there were
reform.
bipartisan deals that were ready to go that got squashed for this, that, and the other reason. The most recent one was, Donald Trump, candidate for his second term, told Congress not to vote, not to support the deal because he wanted to campaign on it and make it a political issue. So it has been used as a political divider among people to make people angry, to make people think that the reason that their lives aren't as good as they'd hoped, or they're not doing well economically, is because of people who've come across the border and taken what should have been theirs. And it just gets used, and I'll just say that it disgusts me that people who are elected to do public policy can't get their act together and do the basic, simple stuff, which is to say, let's have an orderly system like every other country tries to have. Most countries have a fairly orderly system. Every country has some sort of an immigration system. We as Americans can't just move places at will and move into them. There's a process for it. And, while some will say, oh, well, you're just for open borders, Pittman or whoever it is that's saying we need a system. No, absolutely not. No, not open borders, just a fair system of doing asylum, which is in our federal law, and a process that also benefits our economy. We're dependent on immigrant labor and agriculture and construction, so many industries that are so important to the economy. Mass deportation will kill them. That's why chambers of commerce are against mass deportation. So it's just insanity in my view. And I know that you're not part of all that, but you have to deal with the consequences and pick up the pieces and save people's lives. So Thank you for doing
And
that.
we're
I just had to get
seeing
that off my chest, because you can't get it off yours.
I think because of the action not being through Congress, what it means is that so many things that we see, like DACA, like TPS, are from executive actions, and so that means that they're not protected. And so TPS, it is.
Yeah, tell us about TPS, because we have a lot of Salvadorans who've moved here, but other countries as well, where temporary protected status they were given by the United States government by the law, and they were here, and then employers hired them to do work that needed to be done here. And what happened overnight? And
when that designation expires, and it's because it's executive orders, it's totally lawful. When it expires overnight, they revert back to the status that they had previously, which for many, many people is going to be undocumented. So
overnight they're undocumented.
Yeah. So what we're really trying to do is make sure that people have legal consultations to determine.
Thousands of people, right?
Yeah. And I think the piece that, to me, when you really look at it, what is so shocking is how many years people have been here for. Mm-hmm. You're talking about, for Hondurans, I think it was Hurricane Mitch in 1998 when TPS, that's what led to that TPS designation. For Salvadorans, I think it was 2001. We'll need somebody to fact check me. But we're just talking about people who have been here for decades. Many have families here. It's what they know. They've become dependent on us. It was supposed to be temporary, but and we've become dependent on them. And that's the thing that's so insane about then you're kicking them out of the country at that point. And that's what people have asked for, is saying, is there a pathway if somebody has been here and it's been designated, lawful for decades? Can a pathway open up? And same with DACA, there's not a pathway that exists. And you work with people from all over the world, right? Yes, yeah. So many of our clients are from Spanish-speaking countries, but we work with any and all immigrants from anywhere in the world who live in Anne Arundel County, and we're working with folks who are low income, who wouldn't be able to afford that private representation. Well, thank you for the work that you do. If people want to get engaged, obviously you're a nonprofit. How can they help? Yeah, so for us, because of this model and what we do, the more money we raise, the more cases we can provide funding for, the more people we can help. It's just so direct. Direct financial. And so we and this year we actually recently crossed a really exciting number for us. We've provided over $1 million in funding for legal representation for our neighbors. And so since starting our legal fund, not just this year, but so we are always looking, that's huge. Fundraising is really significant for us so that we can do more work. And I'll say that you get a little bit from the county. We have community support grants. We've had amazing support from the county and community support grants. And that is, in my view, that is an important public purpose to make sure that the people who are supporting our economy and living in our communities have due process and legal representation. So that is why the county does that. Well, thank you a lot for that support. And so that's always huge if people are interested in volunteering and getting involved. I welcome them to reach out as well. You can call that same number, 410-357-1050. And you can also find us online at AIJnetwork.org. AIJ, no N. The N is the word network. Network. Yes. Okay. AIJ Network. You got that, everybody? Yeah, .org. .org. Network.org. And we're always looking for volunteers and community members. And not just us. If people have different specialties or areas of expertise, we're so happy to connect them with the great work that Allison in the Office of Multicultural Affairs is doing. There's Anne Arundel Mutual Aid Group. There's so many great people who share those same values that led to AIJN being formed in 2017, which is we want to welcome and take care of our neighbors. So I also just want people to know that they can go to aacounty.org/multicultural affairs, which is our Office of Multicultural Affairs. And there are links to a lot of the work that's going on and a lot of the help that's available for folks. So thank you so much for the work that you do, Jessa, and your whole team. Thank them on our behalf. And thanks for joining us. Thank you so much. You're listening to Pittman and Friends podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button, share with a friend, and join us for the next episode.